The taxi pulled up to the old Victorian house just as the sun began its descent behind the elm trees. Sarah Mitchell pressed her forehead against the cool window, her breath fogging the glass. 20 years. 20 years since she'd last seen this house, this street, this life she'd left behind. "That'll be $47.50, the driver said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Sarah handed him 3 20s and told him to keep the change. Her hands trembled as she reached for her single suitcase in the trunk. Everything she owned in the world fit into one bag now. Funny how life could strip you down to nothing, she thought. The house looked smaller than she remembered, but perhaps that was just her grown-up eyes playing tricks. The blue paint had faded to a weathered gray, and the porch swing her father had built hung slightly crooked on its chains. But the maple tree in the front yard stood tall and proud, its leaves turning that particular shade of amber that meant autumn was settling in. She stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, gathering courage. Through the front window, she could see warm light spilling from what used to be the living room. Someone was home. Of course someone was home. Her mother had said they'd be waiting. The front door opened before Sarah could reach it. Sarah! Her older brother Michael stood in the doorway, broader and grayer than the young man who'd driven her to the airport 2 decades ago. His eyes were the same though, kind, questioning, guarded. "Michael," she managed, her voice catching. I'm here. I can see that." He didn't move, didn't open his arms. "Mom's in the kitchen. Elena's upstairs putting the kids to bed." Elena. Michael's wife. The woman Sarah had never met, the niece and nephew she knew only from Christmas cards her mother forwarded against Sarah's wishes. "And Dad?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. That's why she was here, after all. Hospice nurse just left an hour ago. He's lucid right now. You should go up before he gets too tired. Sarah nodded, clutching her suitcase handle like a lifeline. Michael finally stepped aside, letting her into the house that had once been her home. The interior smelled of her childhood, her mother's lavender sachets mixed with old wood and something cooking, probably the chicken soup her mother made when the world felt like it was ending. And wasn't it? Their father was dying. "Sarah? Is that you, honey?" Her mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a floral apron. Margaret Mitchell had aged gracefully, her silver hair pulled back in the same bun she'd worn for 40 years. But her face had new lines, deep ones etched by worry and grief. "Mom." Sarah dropped her suitcase and fell into her mother's arms. All the years of distance, all the stubborn pride that had kept her away, melted in that embrace. Her mother smelled like vanilla and home, and Sarah realized she'd been holding her breath for 20 years. "Oh, my girl. My baby girl. You're here. You're finally here." Her mother pulled back, cupping Sarah's face in her hands. "Let me look at you. So thin. Have you been eating?" "Of course you haven't been eating." "Mom, I'm fine. You're home. That's what you are." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "He's been asking for you. Every day, has Sarah called? Is Sarah coming? I told him you would. I told him you wouldn't miss this." Guilt twisted in Sarah's stomach. She'd almost missed it. Almost let her pride, her anger, her hurt keep her from saying goodbye to the man who'd raised her, loved her, even when he couldn't understand her choices. "Can I see him?" "Go on up. Second door on the right, you remember. I'll bring you some soup when you're ready." Sarah climbed the stairs slowly, each step weighted with memory. Here was the third step that always creaked. There was the patch on the wall where Michael had thrown a baseball and their father had made him help repair the damage. The family photos still lined the stairwell, school pictures, holidays, moments frozen in time before everything fell apart. She stopped at her parents' bedroom door, hand hovering over the knob. Through the wood, she could hear the soft beep of medical equipment, the whisper of oxygen flowing through tubes. She knocked softly. "Come in." Her father's voice, once so strong and commanding, now thin as paper. Robert Mitchell lay propped up on pillows, an oxygen cannula in his nose, his once powerful frame diminished by illness. But his eyes, those sharp blue eyes that could see right through any lie, brightened when he saw her. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell. A smile cracked across his weathered face. "I'll be damned. You actually came." "Hi, Dad." She moved to his bedside, unsure whether to sit, to touch him, to cry. "Of course I came. Don't lie to an old dying man. You almost didn't." He reached out a trembling hand. "But you're here now. That's what matters." Sarah took his hand, shocked by how fragile it felt. This was the hand that had taught her to throw a curveball, that had fixed her bicycle chain 100 times, that had pointed toward the door the night she'd announced she was leaving and never coming back. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry for..." "Stop." He squeezed her hand with what little strength he had left. "We don't have time for apologies. I got maybe a week, maybe 2 if I'm stubborn about it. And God knows I'm stubborn." Despite everything, Sarah laughed. "You're the most stubborn man I've ever known. Learned it from my daughter." His expression softened. "Tell me about your life, Sarah. Your real life. Not the postcards and that everything's fine phone calls to your mother. Tell me the truth." And so she did. Sitting in the amber glow of the bedside lamp, Sarah told her father about the last 20 years. About the marriage that had crumbled after 5 years. About the job she'd loved and lost in the economic crash. About the friends who drifted away when she couldn't keep up with their successful lives. About the tiny apartment in Seattle where she'd been living paycheck to paycheck until the company downsized and she couldn't make rent anymore. She told him about the phone call from her mother 2 weeks ago. About the cancer that had spread too far, too fast. About the decision to come home, even though home was the place she'd sworn never to return to. Her father listened without judgment, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on the back of her hand. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You know why you left, don't you?" he finally asked. "Because we fought. Because you said I was making a mistake, choosing my career over." "No." He shook his head. "You left because you're brave. Braver than I ever was. You wanted to see what else was out there, who else you could be. I was scared for you, and I let that fear turn into anger. I said things?" He closed his eyes. "I said things a father should never say to his daughter." "Dad. Let me finish. I don't have many words left in me." He opened his eyes, and they were wet with tears. "I was wrong. You weren't running away from us. You were running toward yourself. And I'm proud of you for that. I'm proud of the woman you became, even if I was too stubborn to tell you before now." Sarah's tears came freely now, hot and healing. "I miss so much. Michael's wedding, the kids being born, Mom's birthday parties. I missed all of it because I was too proud to come back, too scared you'd still be angry. We're both stubborn fools, then. A family trait." He smiled. "But you're here now. And maybe there's still time to fix what's broken. Not with me, I'm past fixing. But with them. With Michael, With your mother? With yourself? I don't know if I can, Dad. It's been so long. Time doesn't matter as much as you think it does. Love doesn't have an expiration date. He squeezed her hand again. Promise me something. Anything. Don't waste the next 20 years. Don't let pride keep you from the people who love you. And don't, he coughed, his body shaking with the effort. Sarah reached for the water glass on the nightstand, helping him take small sips. When he could speak again, his voice was barely a whisper. Don't forget that coming home isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do. Part 2, The Brother. Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains of her childhood bedroom. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back, the flight home, the conversation with her father, her mother tucking her into bed like she was still a child. She'd fallen asleep in her old twin bed, surrounded by ghosts of who she used to be. Her mother had kept the room exactly as she'd left it, the faded posters of bands she'd loved, the bookshelf crammed with worn paperbacks, the desk where she'd written college applications and dreamed of bigger worlds. The smell of coffee and bacon drifted up from downstairs. Sarah pulled on jeans and a sweater, bracing herself for whatever this day would bring. In the kitchen, her mother stood at the stove while Michael sat at the breakfast table, scrolling through his phone. A woman Sarah didn't recognize was pouring orange juice into glasses, petite, with dark curly hair and warm brown eyes. "Good morning, sleepyhead," her mother called. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Sarah admitted. "The city is so noisy, I'd forgotten what silence sounds like." "Sarah, this is Elena, Michael's wife," her mother said, setting a plate of scrambled eggs on the table. Elena smiled, genuine and welcoming. "It's so wonderful to finally meet you. I've heard so many stories." "All bad, I'm sure," Sarah said, attempting a joke that fell flat. "Actually, mostly good," Elena said gently. "Michael talks about the sister who taught him to be brave. The one who wasn't afraid to want more than what this small town offered." Sarah glanced at Michael, who was still focused on his phone. "Does he?" Michael finally looked up. "Can we not do this before coffee?" "Do what?" Sarah asked. "The awkward dance where we pretend 20 years didn't happen." "I'm too old for pretense." "Michael," Elena said softly, a warning in her tone. "No, it's fine," Sarah said, sitting down across from her brother. "You're right. We should talk about it." "What's there to talk about?" "You left. You didn't come back. Not for my wedding, not when Emma was born, not when Thomas came along. You sent cards and occasionally answered Mom's calls. That about covers it." The words stung because they were true. Sarah had told herself she was building a new life, but really, she'd been running from the old one. "You're right. I wasn't here. And I'm sorry for that." "Are you? Or are you just sorry now because Dad's dying and you feel guilty?" "That's enough," their mother said sharply. "Your father is upstairs listening to this house tear itself apart, and I won't have it. We're family. We stay family, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Michael stood abruptly. "I have to get to the shop. Break job at 9. He was halfway to the door when Sarah called after him. "Do you need help?" He turned, surprise flickering across his face. "With what?" "The brake job. I don't have anywhere else to be. And I used to be pretty good with cars. Remember? Dad taught us both." For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then he shrugged. "Fine. But I open at 8:30, so if you're coming, you better be ready in 15 minutes. Mitchell's Auto Repair occupied a converted gas station at the edge of town. The building was small but well-maintained, with 2 bays and a small office. A hand-painted sign above the door read "Quality Work, Fair Prices, Estimated 2008. "You built this," Sarah said as Michael unlocked the front door. It wasn't a question. After I got laid off from the factory, Dad helped me get the loan, taught me everything he knew about running a business. Michael flipped on the lights. It's not much, but it's mine. The shop was organized and clean, tools hung on pegboards, parts labeled and shelved. Sarah recognized their father's influence in every detail. It's really nice, Michael. Seriously. He grunted, pulling on coveralls. The Honda Accord in Bay 2 needs new brake pads and rotors all around. If you're actually going to help and not just stand there being nostalgic, there's an extra set of coveralls in the office. They worked in silence at first, the familiar rhythm of turning wrenches and loosening bolts coming back to Sarah like muscle memory. Their father had insisted both his children learn practical skills. You never know when you might need to fix something, he'd always said. Including yourself. Hand me the socket wrench, Michael said, his hand extended. Sarah passed it to him. Remember when Dad made us rebuild the carburetor on that old Chevy? The one he bought for $50 from Mrs. Henderson. A hint of a smile tugged at Michael's mouth. Took us 3 months and about 1,000 trips to the junkyard. But it ran. We got it running. Yeah. Michael was quiet for a moment, then added, he sold it to pay for your first semester textbooks. You probably didn't know that. Sarah's hand stilled. No. I didn't. He never told you because he knew you'd refuse the money. Said you had too much pride, even then. Michael glanced at her. He was right about that, at least. They worked in silence again, but it felt different now, less hostile, more contemplative. Why didn't you ever call? Michael finally asked. Not me specifically, I get that we fought. But Mom. She missed you every single day. She'd set an extra place at Thanksgiving, Christmas, your birthday. Just in case you showed up. Sarah blinked back tears. Because every time I talked to her, I felt like a failure. She'd ask how I was doing, and I'd lie and say everything was great. But it wasn't great, Michael. My marriage fell apart because I worked too much and cared too little. I lost jobs, lost friends, lost myself somewhere along the way. And I couldn't bear for her to know that the daughter who'd left to conquer the world had barely survived it. So you just disappeared. I sent cards. I called on holidays. That's not the same as being present. That's just checking a box so you can tell yourself you tried. He was right, and they both knew it. I was ashamed, Sarah said quietly. Is that what you want to hear? I was ashamed that I'd left with such big plans and came back with nothing. Not even enough money for a hotel room. Michael wiped his hands on a rag, studying her face. You know what I learned from Dad? That there's no shame in trying and failing. The shame is in not trying at all. You tried, Sarah. Maybe it didn't work out the way you hoped, but you tried. That's more than most people do. When did you get so wise? I had good teachers. A stubborn father and a brave sister who showed me it was okay to want something different. He paused. Even if that sister was too proud to come home for 20 years. I really am sorry, Michael. I know. But sorry doesn't give me back the years you missed. Sorry doesn't let you meet my kids when they were babies, or dance at my wedding, or just be here. Be family. You're right. But I'm here now. If you'll let me, I'd like to try to be family again. Even if I don't deserve it. Michael considered this, then handed her another wrench. The back brakes still need doing. Think you remember how? It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly. But it was a start. They worked through the morning, falling into an easy rhythm. Michael told her about the shop, about the regulars who came in, about how the business had grown over the years. Sarah told him about Seattle, about the gray winters and the coffee culture and the mountains she could see from her apartment window on clear days. Around noon, the bell above the door chimed. 2 kids burst into the shop, a girl of about 10 with Michael's dark hair and Elena's warm eyes, and a younger boy with a mop of blonde curls. Dad! Dad! Mom says you forgot your lunch again, the girl announced, holding up a brown paper bag. Michael's face transformed, all the hardness melting away. Emma, what did I tell you about running in the shop? That it's dangerous and someone could get hurt, Emma recited dutifully. Then she noticed Sarah. Who are you? Sarah stood, suddenly nervous. I'm Sarah. Your dad's sister. The aunt we've never met. This from the boy, Thomas, who regarded her with open curiosity. That's right. Why haven't we met you before? Emma asked, her directness so much like Michael's that Sarah had to smile. That's a complicated question with a complicated answer. I'm 10. I can handle complicated. Michael ruffled his daughter's hair. Your aunt and I had some things we needed to work through. But she's here now, and she's going to be staying for a while. Are you staying at Grandma and Grandpa's house? Thomas asked. Yes. Does that mean you'll be there when Grandpa dies? Emma's question was matter-of-fact, the bluntness of a child who'd been prepared for the inevitable. Sarah glanced at Michael, who nodded slightly. Yes, I'll be there. Good, Emma said firmly. Grandma shouldn't be alone when it happens. And Dad gets too sad. He needs help. Out of the mouths of babes, Sarah thought. This 10-year-old had more emotional intelligence than Sarah had managed in 42 years. I'll do my best to help, Sarah promised. Elena appeared in the doorway, slightly breathless. I'm so sorry, they insisted on bringing it themselves. Emma. Thomas. You were supposed to wait for me. It's okay, Michael said, kissing his wife's cheek. Sarah, you remember Elena? From this morning, yes. Sarah smiled at her sister-in-law. Your kids are amazing. They're something, Elena said warmly. Emma, Thomas, why don't we let your dad and aunt finish their work? We'll see Aunt Sarah at dinner tonight. Are you coming to dinner? Emma asked Sarah hopefully. If I'm invited. Your family, Elena said simply. Of course you're invited. After they left, Michael and Sarah finished the brake job. As they cleaned up, Michael said, Elena's the best thing that ever happened to me. Met her at a church potluck 8 years ago. She was new in town, teaching at the elementary school. I took one look at her and knew. Knew what? That she was home. That everything I'd been searching for was standing right there, holding a casserole and looking lost. He smiled at the memory. I wish you could have been at our wedding. Elena wore this vintage dress she found at a thrift shop, and it rained like crazy, so we had to move everything inside. It was chaotic and perfect. I wish I'd been there too. Well. Michael hung up his coveralls. You're here now. Maybe that's enough. Part 3, The Family Dinner. Margaret Mitchell had outdone herself. The dining room table was set with the good china, the kind usually reserved for Christmas and Easter. Candles flickered in crystal holders, casting warm light over platters of roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and homemade rolls. "Mom, you didn't have to go to all this trouble," Sarah said, taking in the spread. "It's not trouble. It's a celebration. My whole family under one roof." Margaret's eyes sparkled with happy tears. "Do you know how long I've prayed for this?" Sarah hugged her mother tightly. 20 years of missed dinners, and here they all were. Michael and Elena arrived with the kids at 6. Emma immediately claimed the seat next to Sarah, chattering about her day at school. Thomas, shy around this new aunt, sat across from them but kept sneaking curious glances her way. They were just sitting down when they heard slow footsteps on the stairs. Everyone looked up as Robert Mitchell appeared in the doorway, leaning heavily on a walker. Margaret rushed to his side. "Robert, what are you doing out of bed?" "I'll be in that bed permanently soon enough." His voice was weak but determined. "I'm having dinner with my family. All of my family." Michael jumped up to help his father to the head of the table. Robert settled into his chair with a grateful sigh, oxygen tank tucked beside him. "Now this," he said, looking around the table, "this is what I've been waiting for." They passed dishes and filled plates, the conversation flowing easily. Emma told increasingly elaborate stories about her teacher's new puppy. Thomas demonstrated his ability to eat mashed potatoes without using his hands until Elena gently reminded him about manners. Michael and Robert discussed a tricky transmission problem at the shop. Sarah found herself relaxing for the first time in years. This was what she'd missed, not just the people, but the feeling. The sense of belonging somewhere, to someone. "Sarah," her father said during a lull in conversation, "tell us about Seattle. What was your favorite part?" She thought for a moment. "Pike Place Market on Sunday mornings. There's this energy there, fishmongers throwing salmon, musicians on every corner, the smell of fresh flowers and coffee. It felt alive." "Did you make friends there?" her mother asked. "Some. There was this woman, Patricia, who lived in my building. We'd have coffee sometimes, share the newspaper. And there was a book club I joined for a while." "Why'd you stop going?" Emma asked. Sarah considered how much truth a 10-year-old could handle. "I got busy with work, and then life just got complicated." "That's what grown-ups say when they're sad but don't want to talk about it," Emma observed. "Emma!" Elena gasped. "That's not polite." But Sarah laughed. "She's not wrong. Yes, Emma, I was sad. But I'm feeling better now." "Because you're home?" Thomas asked quietly. "Yes. Because I'm home." Robert raised his water glass with a shaking hand. "To coming home. However long it takes us to get there." They all raised their glasses, water for the kids, wine for the adults, and echoed, "To coming home." After dinner, while Margaret and Elena cleaned up despite Sarah's offers to help, Michael took Sarah out to the back porch. The sun had set, and fireflies were beginning to blink in the gathering dusk. "Dad's not going to make it much longer," Michael said without preamble. "The nurse says maybe a week, but I think it'll be sooner. He's holding on for something." "For what?" "I don't know. Maybe just this. Having us all together one last time." Michael leaned against the porch railing. "He asked me something yesterday. Asked if I'd forgiven you." "Have you?" "I'm working on it." He turned to look at her. "You hurt us, Sarah. You hurt Mom most of all." Every holiday, every milestone, she'd put on a brave face, but I could see her hoping you'd call, you'd show up. And you never did. I know. And I can't undo that. No, you can't. But you can be here now. You can be the sister I remember, the one who stood up to Tommy Martinez when he stole my lunch money in 3rd grade. The one who taught me how to talk to girls without sounding like an idiot. The one who believed I could do something more than work at the factory like Dad. You did do more. You built something real. Because you showed me it was possible to build something new. You were the first person in our family to leave, to try something different. That gave me permission to dream about my own shop, to believe I could make it work. Sarah felt tears threatening. I thought you hated me for leaving. I was angry. Angry that you left, angry that you stayed gone, angry that you seemed to forget about us. Michael's voice cracked. But I never hated you, Sarah. You're my sister. That doesn't just stop because time passes or because we're both too stubborn to pick up a phone. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the fireflies dance in the yard. Inside, they could hear Emma's laugh, Margaret's voice humming an old lullaby, the clink of dishes being washed. I want to stay, Sarah said suddenly. Not just for Dad, but after. If you'll let me. If there's room for me here. In the house. In the family. In your lives. She turned to face him. I don't have anywhere else to be here, Michael. No job waiting, no apartment, no life to get back to. Everything I had fell apart. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe I needed to fall apart so I could build something real, like you did. What would you do here? This town isn't exactly brimming with opportunities. I don't know yet. But I'd like to figure it out while I'm surrounded by people who love me, instead of alone in a city where nobody notices if I disappear for days. Michael studied her face in the dim light. You were really that alone? Yeah. I really was. He pulled her into a hug, sudden and fierce. You're not alone anymore. You're home. And we take care of our own. Sarah buried her face in her brother's shoulder and let herself cry, for the lost years, for the pain she'd caused, for the love she'd been too afraid to accept. But also for this moment, this second chance she didn't deserve but was grateful for anyway. When they finally pulled apart, Michael said, Dad's been asking for you to read to him. He's too weak to hold a book anymore, and his eyes get tired. But he loves being read to. What does he want me to read? The book is on his nightstand. Some old novel he's been working through. I think he just wants to hear your voice. Sarah found her father awake, staring at the ceiling. The bedside lamp cast gentle shadows, and the oxygen machine hummed its steady rhythm. Hey, Dad. Michael said you might like someone to read to you. Robert's face brightened. Sarah. Yes, please. The book, there on the table. She picked it up, a worn copy of Least of Eden by Steinbeck, a bookmark about 2/3 through. This was always one of your favorites, she remembered. Still is. Something about the choices we make, the legacies we leave, feels relevant these days. He chuckled weakly. Read from the bookmark. Sarah settled into the chair beside his bed and began to read. Her father closed his eyes, a small smile playing at his lips. She read until her voice grew hoarse, until she noticed his breathing had deepened into sleep. She was about to leave when his hand reached out, catching hers. Stay, he murmured, not opening his eyes. Just a little longer. So she stayed, holding her father's hand, watching his chest rise and fall, memorizing the moment. Outside, the house settled into its nighttime sounds, floorboards creaking, pipes sighing, the wind rustling through the maple tree. This was time, Sarah realized. Not the years she'd wasted running, but these moments right here. This was what mattered. Part 4 of the week that changed everything. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Sarah would wake early, help her mother with breakfast, spend mornings at the shop with Michael, and afternoons reading to her father or helping with his care. Evenings were for family dinners, getting to know Emma and Thomas, and long conversations on the porch with whoever needed company. Elena taught Sarah how to braid Emma's hair. She's been begging for someone new to try different styles. Thomas showed her his rock collection and explained in serious detail the differences between sedimentary and igneous formations. Margaret shared family recipes and stories Sarah had never heard. But beneath everything was the waiting, for the inevitable, for Robert's final breath, for the moment that would change them all. On Wednesday afternoon, Sarah was reading to her father when he interrupted her. "Sarah, stop. We need to talk." She marked the page and set the book down. "What is it, Dad?" "I need you to promise me something." "Several somethings, actually." "Okay. First, promise me you'll take care of your mother. She's going to try to be strong, to take care of everyone else, but she's going to fall apart. Don't let her fall apart alone." "I promise." Second, give Michael time. He's angry still, even though he's trying not to be. He feels like you abandoned him, and in some ways, you did. But he loves you. He'll come around fully. Just be patient. "I will." Third, and this is the important one, don't you dare spend the rest of your life in this house playing nursemaid to your mother and mechanic to your brother. You came home, and that's good. But don't make home a prison. Sarah started to protest, but he raised a hand to stop her. "I mean it. You've got talents, girl. Gifts. Don't waste them out of guilt or fear or whatever it is that's been chasing you these 20 years. Live. Really live. Make mistakes, take chances, fall in love if you can find someone worth loving. But don't just exist. I've been lying in this bed for 6 weeks watching life happen through a window, and let me tell you, it's a terrible way to live. Dad, I'm not. You are. You've been watching life through a window for 20 years. You moved to Seattle, but did you really live there? Or did you just go to work, go home, go through the motions?" Sarah couldn't answer because he was right. She'd been so focused on surviving, on building a career, on proving something to someone, herself, her family, the world, that she'd forgotten to actually live. "I met a man once," her father continued. "This was about 5 years ago, after you stopped coming home for visits. He was a traveler, passing through town, needed his truck fixed. We got to talking while Michael worked on it. He'd been everywhere, Europe, Asia, South America. Told me the most beautiful places he'd ever seen. Where were they? That's the thing. He said the most beautiful place was always wherever he was present. Where he stopped running and actually noticed where he was." Robert squeezed her hand. "You've been running your whole life, sweetheart. First from this town, then from your marriage, then from your failures. But running doesn't fix anything. It just makes you tired. So what do I do? You stop. You plant yourself somewhere and you grow roots. Real ones. The kind that go deep and hold you steady when storms come." He coughed, and Sarah reached for the water. After he drank, he continued. "This town, this house, this family, we're not perfect. God knows we're not perfect. But we're yours. And you're ours. That's what family means. It means you're stuck with us, and we're stuck with you, and somehow we make it work. I don't know if I know how to do that anymore. How to stay. Then learn. You learned how to leave, how to be alone, how to survive without us. Learning how to stay, how to connect, how to belong, that's just the next lesson. Sarah rested her head on the edge of his bed, and her father stroked her hair like he'd done when she was small and had skinned her knee or lost a friend or faced any of childhood's small tragedies. I'm scared, Dad. Of what? Of disappointing you all again. Of trying to stay and failing. Of this being temporary and me ending up alone again anyway. Feel the fear and stay anyway. That's what courage is. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to stay despite it. On Friday, Robert took a turn. The nurse came more frequently, her face growing more serious with each visit. Family gathered, Michael and Elena, Margaret, Sarah. Even some neighbors and old friends stopped by to say goodbye. Emma and Thomas were allowed in for a few minutes. They were brave, so brave it broke Sarah's heart. Bye, Grandpa, Emma whispered, kissing his cheek. Thank you for teaching me how to fish. Thomas just held his grandfather's hand and cried quiet tears. That night, the family took shift sitting with Robert. Sarah took the midnight to 3 a.m. watch. She sat in the chair beside his bed, listening to his labored breathing, occasionally reading aloud from East of Eden when she thought he might be awake. Around 2 in the morning, his eyes opened. Sarah. I'm here, Dad. Good. That's good. He was quiet for a moment, gathering strength. Do you know why I loved this book? Why? Because it's about Timshel. Do you know what that means? Sarah searched her memory from long ago English classes. Thou mayest. Exactly. Not thou shalt or thou shalt not. But thou mayest. You have a choice. His breathing was shallow now. That's what I want you to remember. You have a choice. About who you become, how you love, how you live. It's always a choice, Sarah. Always. I'll remember. And one more thing. His voice was fading. Tell your mother, tell her she made me the happiest man alive. Every single day. Even the hard ones. I will, Dad. I promise. He smiled, closed his eyes, and didn't open them again. Robert Mitchell passed away at 4:47 a.m. on Saturday morning, with his family surrounding his bed. Margaret held one hand, Sarah the other, while Michael stood at the foot of the bed with his arm around his mother's shoulders. The hospice nurse confirmed what they already knew, spoke gentle words about peace and dignity, and quietly left the family to their grief. They sat there for a long time, none of them wanting to be the first to leave, to break the circle, to acknowledge that this was real and permanent. Finally, Margaret stood. I need to call the funeral home. And Father Murphy. And... Her voice broke. I need to make coffee. I always make coffee when I don't know what else to do. Mom, let me, Sarah started. No. I need to do this. I need to. Margaret looked at her husband's still face, reached out to smooth his hair one last time. I need to keep moving or I'll fall apart. She left the room, her footsteps steady despite everything. Michael and Sarah remained, neither speaking. He was ready, Michael finally said. He'd been ready for a while. Just waiting to make sure we'd all be okay. Do you think we will be? Okay? Eventually. Not today, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually. He looked at his sister. He was right, you know. About you needing to stay. Not just for Mom, but for you. I know. The shop. I could use help. Real help. Someone to manage the office side, handle the books, deal with customers. I'm good with cars, terrible with paperwork. He paused. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work. And it would give you time to figure out what comes next. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. You do that? After everything? Your family. That's what we do. He stood, kissed the top of her head like he used to when they were kids. Besides, Dad would haunt me if I didn't look after you. Part 5, The Funeral and What Came After. The funeral was on Tuesday. It seemed like the entire town turned out, former co-workers from the factory, regular customers from the shop, neighbors, friends from church, people whose cars Robert had fixed over the years, parents of kids he'd coached in Little League decades ago. Father Murphy delivered a beautiful eulogy about a man who'd lived his values, who'd taught his children to work hard and love deeply, who'd never met a stranger or a problem he couldn't fix given enough time and the right tools. Sarah stood at the podium, hands shaking, and read from East of Eden, the passage about Timshel, about choice, about the power we all have to decide who we become. Her voice cracked only once, when she added, "My father gave me the greatest gift any parent can give, he let me go, even when it hurt him. And then he taught me that coming home isn't failure. It's choosing love over pride. It's choosing family over fear." Michael spoke about learning everything from their father, how to change a tire, how to treat people fairly, how to build something that lasts. He taught me that your word is your bond, and that doing good work isn't just about the result. It's about the care you put into every detail, the respect you show to every person, the integrity you bring to every moment. Emma read a poem she'd written about her grandfather teaching her to fish, a young voice clear and brave. Thomas placed his favorite rock, a piece of quartz that caught the light, in the casket. "So Grandpa has something pretty to look at," he explained. At the cemetery, under a sky-threatening rain, they laid Robert Mitchell to rest next to his parents and grandparents, in the family plot where generations of Mitchells had been buried. As the first drops began to fall, Margaret placed a single red rose on the casket. "Goodbye, my love," she whispered. "Wait for me, but not too eagerly. I still have work to do here." The week after the funeral was strange. The house felt too quiet, too empty, despite being full of people. Neighbors brought casseroles and condolences. The phone rang constantly with people checking in. Cards and flowers arrived daily. Sarah threw herself into helping her mother sort through Robert's things, his clothes to donate, his tools to pass on to Michael, his personal papers to organize. It was painful work, each item a memory, each memory a fresh wound. But slowly, very slowly, life began to reassert itself. Michael officially hired Sarah at the shop. She started answering phones, managing appointments, handling invoices. It turned out she was good at it, organizing chaos, making systems work, dealing with difficult customers with patience and grace. "You're a natural," Michael said one afternoon, watching her calmly explain to Mr. Henderson why his bill was higher than expected. "Dad would have loved having you here." Sarah also started helping Emma with her homework in the evenings, teaching Thomas about constellations on clear nights, having long conversations with Elena about everything and nothing. And every evening, she'd sit with her mother in the living room, the two of them working through their grief one cup of tea at a time. "I miss him so much," Margaret said one night, staring at Robert's empty chair. 43 years of marriage, and I still don't know how to be just me instead of us." "You don't have to figure it out all at once, Mom. I keep expecting him to come through that door, asking what's for dinner or telling me about some car problem he solved." She smiled through her tears. "He'd be so happy you're here, Sarah." This is what he wanted most, his family together. I'm not going anywhere, Mom. I promise. Margaret took her daughter's hand. Don't make promises you can't keep. Life has a way of taking us in unexpected directions. Then I promise to try. To really try this time. That's all any of us can do. Part 6, New Beginnings. 3 months after the funeral, Sarah was deep into organizing the shop's chaotic filing system when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up to see a man in his mid-40s, tall with kind eyes and an apologetic smile. I'm sorry to bother you, but is this Mitchell's Auto Repair? It is. Do you have an appointment? No, I was just passing through town and heard this was the best shop around. He gestured to the parking lot. My truck's making a weird noise. I was hoping someone could take a quick look. Let me check with Michael. Sarah called back to the shop. Mike? Got a walk-in with a noisy truck. Michael emerged, wiping his hands on a rag. Bring it around to Bay 1. I've got about 20 minutes before my next appointment. The man pulled his truck into the bay, and Michael got to work. Sarah returned to her filing but found herself distracted by the stranger, who stood near the office door, looking at the photos on the wall, pictures of the shop's history, of Robert Mitchell cutting the ribbon at the grand opening, of various cars they'd restored over the years. Your father? He asked, pointing to a picture of Robert. Yes. He passed away a few months ago. I'm sorry. He looks like he was a good man. The best. Sarah joined him at the wall. He taught my brother everything about cars, about running a business, about being decent. It shows. This place has good energy. You can tell when a business is built on love rather than just profit. Sarah studied him more closely. There was something familiar about him, though she was certain they'd never met. Are you from around here? No, I'm based in Portland, but I travel a lot for work. I'm a photographer, nature, mostly. I've been driving around this part of the state looking for locations. Find anything good? Actually, yes. There's a spot about 10 miles from here, where the river bends through those old growth trees. The light in the early morning is incredible. His eyes lit up as he spoke, and Sarah found herself smiling. That's my favorite spot. My dad used to take us fishing there when we were kids. Then you know how special it is. He extended his hand. I'm David Chen, by the way. Sarah Mitchell. They shook hands, and Sarah felt something shift, not dramatically, but like a door opening somewhere she hadn't known was closed. Michael emerged from under the truck. Good news and bad news. Good news is it's just a loose heat shield. 5-minute fix. Bad news is I'm going to have to charge you the minimum service fee anyway. That's completely fair, David said. How much do I owe you? After the bill was settled and David's truck was fixed, he lingered by the door. This might be forward of me, but would you be interested in grabbing coffee sometime? I'm going to be in the area for another week or so, and it would be nice to talk to someone who knows the good spots around here. Sarah hesitated. She hadn't been on a date in over 3 years, hadn't even thought about romance since her divorce. But something about David's easy manner, his genuine interest, made her want to say yes. There's a diner on Main Street. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. I'll be there. Sarah told herself it wasn't a date. Just coffee with a stranger who was passing through. No expectations, no pressure, just 2 people talking. But she found herself trying on 3 different outfits before settling on jeans and a blue sweater. She even put on a little makeup, which made her mother raise her eyebrows knowingly at breakfast. Hot date. Margaret asked innocently. It's not a date. Just coffee with someone who came into the shop. Her mother's smile said she wasn't fooled. The diner was warm and busy, filled with the morning crowd. David was already there, sitting in a booth by the window with 2 cups of coffee waiting. I took a guess on how you take it, he said as she slid in across from him. Cream, no sugar? Perfect. How did you know? Lucky guess. You seem like someone who appreciates sweetness in life but doesn't need it added artificially. Sarah laughed. That's either very insightful or very smooth. Can't it be both? They talked for 2 hours, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. David told her about growing up in California, about how he'd discovered photography after a bad breakup in his 20s, about the year he'd spent hiking the Pacific Crest Trail and how it had changed everything. What did it change? Sarah asked. My perspective on what matters. Before the trail, I was working in finance, making good money, climbing the ladder. But I was miserable. Every day felt like I was wearing someone else's life. The trail stripped all that away. For 6 months, all that mattered was putting one foot in front of the other, finding water, noticing the light on the mountains. It taught me that I'd rather be poor and authentic than rich and empty. So you became a photographer. Eventually. First I had to unlearn everything I thought I knew about success and build a life that actually felt like mine. He studied her face. You look like someone who understands their journey. Sarah told him about Seattle, about the career she'd built and lost, about coming home and discovering that the life she'd thought she wanted wasn't the life she needed. It's strange, she said. I spent 20 years running from this town, from my family, from everything I thought was holding me back. And then I lost everything I'd been running toward, and the only place left to go was back to the beginning. Maybe that's not going backward. Maybe it's going deeper. What do you mean? There's a difference between running away and running toward. When you left the first time, you were running away from expectations, from limits, from who you were supposed to be. But coming back now? That's running toward something. Toward connection, toward healing, toward becoming who you actually are instead of who you thought you should be. Sarah felt tears prickling her eyes. That's exactly it. That's exactly what it feels like, but I couldn't put it into words. David reached across the table and squeezed her hand. It was a simple gesture, friendly and warm, but Sarah felt it all the way through her body, the reminder that human connection was possible, that she wasn't as broken as she'd feared. They parted ways with promises to meet again. David wanted to explore more of the area, and Sarah offered to show him some of the hidden spots only locals knew about. Over the next week, they hiked to the waterfall where teenagers went to prove their bravery, had lunch at the family-owned Mexican restaurant that had been there for 40 years, watched the sunset from the bluff overlooking the valley. David took hundreds of photos, capturing not just the landscape but the life of the town, the farmer's market on Saturday morning, the kids playing in the park, the old men playing chess outside the barber shop. And somewhere in all that exploring, somewhere between conversations about art and life and what it means to be home, Sarah felt something shifting inside her. Not love, not yet. But the possibility of it. The sense that maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over. Maybe it was just beginning. Part 7, The Choice. On David's last night in town, they had dinner at a small Italian restaurant on the edge of the downtown area. Candles flickered on checkered tablecloths, and a guitarist played soft music in the corner. I have something to tell you, David said over dessert. I've been offered a job. A big one. National Geographic wants me to spend 6 months in New Zealand documenting the conservation efforts there. David, that's amazing. That's huge. It is. It's everything I've been working toward. He paused. But it means leaving in 2 weeks. And I've been thinking, this past week with you has been really special. I'd like to see where this goes, but I don't know if that's fair to ask given the timing. Sarah felt her heart sink and saw simultaneously. What are you asking? I guess I'm asking if you'd be interested in staying in touch. Really staying in touch, not just the occasional text. I know long distance is hard, and I know you just got here, and I know it's crazy to even suggest this after knowing each other for a week. Yes. Yes? Yes, I want to stay in touch. Yes, I want to see where this goes. Yes, it's crazy, but maybe that's okay. Sarah reached for his hand. I've spent so much of my life being careful, being cautious, protecting myself from disappointment. And where did it get me? Alone and unhappy. So maybe it's time to try something different. Maybe it's time to be brave. David grinned. For someone who claims to be newly brave, you're pretty good at it. I had a good teacher. My dad spent his last days teaching me about timchal, about choosing. About how we always have a choice in how we respond to life. So I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you, or at least the possibility of you. Even if it's complicated. They spent the rest of the evening talking about logistics, video calls, visits when David had breaks, Sarah maybe flying out to meet him somewhere if she could afford it and Michael could spare her from the shop. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was a start. When David dropped her off at home, he kissed her good night, gentle and sweet and full of promise. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. And the day after that. And the day after that. You better. Sarah floated into the house to find her mother and brother waiting up, pretending to watch television but clearly ready to interrogate her. Don't even start, Sarah said, but she was smiling. We're not starting anything, Margaret said innocently. We're just sitting here, minding our own business, not at all wondering why our Sarah is coming home at 11 o'clock at night with stars in her eyes. Stars in her eyes. Michael laughed. Mom, that's so corny. But accurate, Elena said, curled up next to Michael on the couch. You're glowing, Sarah. Sarah collapsed into the armchair. Okay, fine. Yes, I like him. Yes, we're going to try to stay in touch even though he's leaving for New Zealand in 2 weeks. Yes, it's probably crazy. Happy? Deliriously, her mother said. Your father would be over the moon. He always said you needed someone who could keep up with you, someone who understood that restless part of your soul. David gets it. He really does. Sarah pulled her knees up to her chest. But I'm scared. What if I'm not good at this? What if I mess it up? Then you mess it up, Michael said. But at least you tried. At least you didn't spend the rest of your life wondering what if. When did you become so wise? I've always been wise. You were just too busy running away to notice. Sarah threw a pillow at him, and he threw it back, and suddenly they were all laughing, the kind of easy, genuine laughter that had been missing from the house for too long. David left on a Tuesday morning. Sarah drove him to the airport, 2 hours away, and they held hands the entire drive. At departures, they stood beside his bags, neither wanting to say goodbye. 6 months, David said. That's not so long. It's going to feel like forever. Then we'll make it count. Every call, every message, every moment we do have. He cupped her face in his hands. I meant what I said, Sarah. I want to see where this goes. I'm all in if you are. I'm all in. They kissed one more time, long and deep, memorizing each other. Then David grabbed his bags and walked toward security, turning back 3 times to wave. Sarah waited until he was out of sight, then cried all the way home. Not sad tears exactly, but the tears that come when something ends and something else begins, and you're not quite sure what any of it means, but you know it matters. Part 8, 6 months later. True to his word, David called every day. Sometimes they'd talk for hours, him describing the landscapes of New Zealand, her telling him about life in the shop, in the town, with her family. Sometimes it was just 5 minutes to say good morning or good night. But he never missed a day. Sarah threw herself into life at home. She streamlined the shop's operations, implemented a new scheduling system, started a social media presence that brought in younger customers. Michael gave her a raise and a partnership stake in the business. She joined her mother's book club, started volunteering at Emma's school, took a photography class at the community college, inspired by David, though she'd never admit it. She made friends, real friends, people who knew her now, not just who she'd been 20 years ago. And slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice, Sarah stopped feeling like she was just passing time until her real life could start somewhere else. This became her real life. This town, this family, this small but meaningful existence. On a Wednesday in March, 6 months to the day since David had left, Sarah was closing up the shop when a familiar truck pulled into the lot. Her heart stopped. David climbed out, looking tired and rumpled and perfect. "Hi. You're supposed to be in New Zealand for 2 more weeks. I finished early. Couldn't wait 2 more weeks to see you." He walked toward her, and Sarah met him halfway, throwing herself into his arms. "You're here. You're actually here." "I'm here." "And Sarah?" "I've been thinking about what comes next." "What comes next?" National Geographic loved the New Zealand work. "They want me to do more projects, but they're flexible about location. I could base myself anywhere." He pulled back to look at her. "What if I base myself here? What if we tried this for real, not just phone calls and video chats, but actual everyday life?" Sarah's mind raced. "You'd move here? To this tiny town in the middle of nowhere?" "It's not nowhere. It's where you are. And I've learned that where you are is where I want to be." He smiled. "Plus, your brother already said I could rent the apartment above the shop. Apparently he's been planning this for months." Michael knew. "I called him 2 weeks ago to ask his blessing. Thought it was the right thing to do, asking your family if it was okay to move across the country to be with you." And what did he say? He said, and I quote, "About damn time. My sister's been moping around here for 6 months pretending she's fine, but she lights up every time you call. So get your butt back here and make her happy." Sarah laughed through her tears. "That sounds like Michael. So what do you say? Should I unpack my bags? Should we try this?" Sarah thought about her father's words about Timchel, about choice, about how we decide who we become. She thought about the scared woman who'd come home 6 months ago with nothing but a suitcase and a heart full of regrets. She thought about who she was now, rooted, connected, brave. Yes. Yes, let's try this. David kissed her there in the parking lot of Mitchell's Auto Repair, with the sun setting behind the mountains and the future spreading out before them like an open road. Part 9, 1 year later. The wedding was small, just family and close friends gathered in the backyard of the house on Maple Street. Margaret had transformed the garden into something magical, string lights hanging from the trees, flowers everywhere, the scent of roses and possibility in the air. Sarah wore a simple white dress, her mother's pearls, and a smile that wouldn't quit. David stood under an arch of climbing roses, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. Father Murphy officiated, speaking about journeys and homecomings, about how love sometimes requires us to travel far before we can appreciate what was always close. Emma and Thomas served as flower girl and ring bearer, taking their duties very seriously. Elena stood as Sarah's maid of honor, having become not just a sister-in-law but a true friend over the past year. Michael walked Sarah down the aisle, and when Father Murphy asked who gave this woman, he said, "Her family does, with more love and joy than she probably deserves after making us wait so long." Everyone laughed, including Sarah. The vows were simple but heartfelt. David promised to always remind Sarah that she was home, wherever they were. Sarah promised to keep choosing bravery, choosing love, choosing them. When they kissed, the small crowd erupted in cheers. Margaret cried happy tears. Michael whistled loudly. Emma declared it the most romantic thing ever. At the reception, while guests ate and danced and celebrated, Sarah found herself standing under the maple tree, looking at the house, at her family, at this life she'd built from the ruins of her old one. David came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about something my dad said before he died. About how the most beautiful place is wherever you're fully present. Wherever you stop running and actually notice where you are." "And where are you now?" Sarah leaned back against him, watching Emma twirl on the makeshift dance floor, watching her mother laugh at something Michael said, watching all these people she loved living their lives in her presence. "I'm home," she said. "Finally, completely, really home." "Good," David whispered. "Because home is exactly where you belong." That night, after the guests had left and the lights had been taken down, after the cake was eaten and the gifts were opened, Sarah and David walked to the cemetery. They stood at Robert Mitchell's grave in the moonlight, and Sarah placed a single red rose on the headstone. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for letting me go, and thank you for teaching me how to come back. Thank you for showing me that love is always a choice, and choosing love is always right." The wind rustled through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Sarah felt David's hand slip into hers, felt the weight of her wedding ring, felt the fullness of a heart she'd thought was empty forever. "He'd be proud of you," David said softly. "I know. I can feel it." And she could, a warmth in her chest, a certainty that somehow, somewhere, her father knew. Knew she'd found her way. Knew she'd chosen well. Knew she was finally, truly, completely home. Epilogue, 5 years on. Sarah's cafe opened on a Tuesday morning in April, in the renovated space next to Michael's auto repair. The shop had expanded over the years, and when the adjacent building came up for sale, David had convinced Sarah to take the leap. "You've been talking about opening a place where people can gather, where travelers passing through can find good coffee and conversation," he'd said. "Why not make it happen?" So she did. The cafe was warm and welcoming, with photos from David's travels on the walls, all for sale, with proceeds going to conservation efforts, Margaret's recipes in the kitchen, and local artists' work on display. It became a gathering place, for morning coffee, for afternoon chess games, for book club meetings and birthday celebrations and first dates. Emma, now 15 and already taller than her mother, worked there after school, serving coffee and chattering with customers. Thomas, 12 and passionate about science, used one corner as his laboratory, conducting experiments that occasionally alarmed the health inspector but always delighted the regulars. Michael's business continued to thrive, and he'd hired 2 more mechanics to keep up with demand. He still came into the cafe every morning at 7 for coffee and to razz his sister about her fancy city drinks. Margaret had moved into a smaller house in town, saying the big house on Maple Street held too many memories. Sarah and David bought it from her, filling it with new memories, dinner parties and game nights, lazy Sunday mornings, David's photography equipment in the spare room, Sarah's ever-expanding cookbook collection in the kitchen. On this particular Tuesday, Sarah's 5th wedding anniversary, she stood behind the counter of her cafe, watching the morning rush. Mrs. Henderson complained about her arthritis. Mr. Chen, no relation to David, tried to flirt with Elena, who was helping out for the day. A group of teenagers worked on homework in the corner booth. Through the window, Sarah could see the garage where Michael was already working, could see the maple tree where she'd stood years ago, terrified and broken and somehow, miraculously, home. David came in from his morning run, sweaty and grinning. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Chen." "Happy anniversary, Mr. Chen." She poured him his usual, black coffee, no sugar. "How was the run?" "Beautiful. The light by the river is perfect right now. I want to take you there tomorrow morning, show you something I've been working on." "Another project." "Always another project. But this one's special. It's about homecoming, people returning to the places they left, finding their way back to themselves. I thought maybe you could write the text to go with the photos. Tell your story." Sarah considered this. She'd been writing more lately, essays about small-town life, about family, about the journey from lost to found. Some of them had been published in small magazines. Others sat in her journal, private treasures. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." He kissed her cheek. "Love you." "Love you too." As he headed upstairs to shower, Emma came over with a knowing smile. "You two are disgustingly cute, you know that." "We try." "Are you and Uncle David going to do anything special for your anniversary?" "Probably just dinner at home. Your grandmother's making her famous lasagna." "Boring. You should do something exciting." When you get to be my age, quiet nights at home with people you love become exciting." Emma rolled her eyes. "You're 47, Aunt Sarah, not 90. "True. But I've had enough excitement for one lifetime. Now I'm content with the simple things." And it was true. Sarah had stopped chasing the next big thing, the next achievement, the next proof that she mattered. She'd learned that mattering wasn't about what you accomplished or where you lived or what impressive title you held. Mattering was about showing up. About being present. About loving people and letting them love you back. About building a life that felt authentic, even if it wasn't impressive to anyone else. That evening, the family gathered at the house on Maple Street. Margaret brought her lasagna, Elena brought salad, Michael brought wine. The kids brought noise and laughter and the beautiful chaos of young life. They ate and talked and shared stories. David showed them his latest photos. Michael complained about a particularly difficult repair job. Margaret updated everyone on the church committee drama. Emma talked about the boy she liked and made everyone promise not to embarrass her. Thomas explained his latest scientific theory about whether time travel was possible. Later, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Sarah and David sat on the porch swing her father had built, watching fireflies dance in the darkness. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked. "Giving up the big assignments, the constant travel, the adventure?" "Never." David pulled her closer. "This is the adventure, Sarah. This life we're building together, this family we're part of, this community we're serving. This is the story I want to be part of. Even though it's small? Even though most people would say we're not doing anything important. Who says we're not doing anything important?" He gestured toward the house, toward the town beyond. "We're raising kids. Emma and Thomas might not be ours biologically, but we're helping shape who they become. We're taking care of your mother. We're providing a place for people to gather and connect. We're telling stories through my photos and your words. We're choosing every day to build something real. When did you get so wise? I learned from you. You're the one who taught me that coming home isn't giving up. It's choosing what matters most. Sarah thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So much fear, so much running, so much belief that happiness was always somewhere else, with someone else, in some other version of her life. And now here she was. Home. Happy. Whole. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For choosing me. For choosing this. For helping me believe I was worth choosing. David tilted her face up to kiss her. Always, Sarah. Always. They sat in comfortable silence, swaying gently on the swing, listening to the night sounds of the town they'd chosen, the life they'd built, the home they'd made. And somewhere, Sarah felt certain, her father was smiling. The end. For everyone who has ever left home searching for themselves, only to discover that sometimes the longest journey is the one that brings us back to where we started, not as the people we were, but as the people we were always meant to become.